Perfect. Well, again, it is exactly 2 o'clock now, and so folks are still joining us on the line. However, we'll go ahead and begin today's webinar. So again, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you all for joining us for today's grant solicitation webinar for the OJJDP FY19 Youth Gang Desistance and Diversion Grants Program. My name is William Moore, and I am with the Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention's National Training and Technical Assistance Center. As your technical host, I would like to take a couple of minutes to discuss a few features of Adobe Connect and help provide a few announcements to keep in mind. Please note that today's webinar is being recorded. The webinar recording will be archived on NTTAC's YouTube channel, where you can also view past webinars. For the event transcript or supporting materials, please contact OJJDP NTTAC Help Desk. For those wishing to download a copy of the PowerPoint slides and other important documents, you may do so by locating the handouts pod directly above the chat area. Here, you will also find an FAQ for webinar participants that will likely address any technical related questions. Simply click on the file name, then click the download button. During today's webinar, the presenters will address questions during our Q&A segment. Please type your questions into the chat box as they arise. For those of you participating in today's webinar as a group, please take a minute to help us count. Go to the chat window and type in the total number of additional people in the room with you today. If you are viewing alone, there's no need to type anything into the chat pod at this time. And I'll give some folks a couple of seconds to do that. Again, please go to the chat window and type in the total number of additional people in the room with you today. If you're viewing alone, there's no need to type anything into the chat window at this time. Following today's webinar, attendees will be sent a certificate of attendance. This certificate is sent approximately 1 hour following the conclusion of the event and is sent via an Adobe Connect thank you email. Please keep an eye on your email for your certificate. Please note that only participants that are registered and signed in will receive a certificate of attendance. At the conclusion of today's webinar, you will be provided with the link to a brief survey, a brief evaluation about today's presentation. The feedback you provide is used to assist in future planning and training. I will now turn today's webinar over to our presenters, Eric Stansberry and Darian Hanrahan, for today's webinar. Thank you.
OJDP is seeking proposals from applicant jurisdictions struggling with high levels of youth gang violence to implement one or more components of the OJDP comprehensive gang model as part of a community and data-driven desistance diversion response to gang-related crime and violence. The Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention, OJJDP, is a component of the Office of Justice programs. Its vision, the Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention envisions a nation where our children are free from crime and violence. If they come into contact with the justice system, the contact should be both just and beneficial to them. OJJDP provides national leadership, coordination, and resources to prevent and respond to juvenile delinquency and victimization. OJDP supports the efforts of states, tribes, and communities to develop and implement effective and equitable juvenile justice systems that enhance public safety, ensure youth are held appropriately accountable to both crime victims and communities, and empower youth to live productive, law-abiding lives. The webinar objectives today are to provide a general overview of OJJDP's FY19 Youth Gang Desistance and Diversion Grants Program. We will highlight key eligibility and solicitation requirements, identify tools and resources for applicants that will facilitate the application process. We will provide an opportunity for applicants to ask questions. The OJJDP Gang and Youth Violence Prevention Strategy is based on the recognition that preventing and reducing gang crime and violence requires a shared framework of strategic and coordinated delivery of programs, services, and practices across multiple sectors that balance community development, prevention, intervention, and targeted suppression and enforcement. The release date for the solicitation was April 23rd, 2019, and closing date is June 24th, 2019. OJDP expects to make any award in the form of a grant. The maximum number of awards OJDP expects to make 4. The amount for each award is up to $500,000. The project period start date, October 1, 2019. Performance duration for 36 months. The Youth Gang Desistance Diversion Grants Program is designed to reduce violent crimes, gangs, and youth victimization, and enhance public safety in communities through desistance and diversion opportunities for youth at risk of becoming gang involved or continuing in the gang lifestyle. Eligible applicants are limited to states, including territories, units of local government, federally recognized tribal governments as determined by the Secretary of Interior, nonprofit and for-profit organizations, including tribal nonprofit and for-profit organizations, and institutions of higher education, including tribal institutions of higher education. All recipients and subrecipients, including for-profit organizations, must forego any profit or management fee. Eligible applicants that are proposed to provide direct service to youth must not include youth who are 18 or older in the population they will serve. OJDP welcomes applications under which 2 or more entities will carry out the federal award. However, only one entity must be the applicant. Any others must be proposed as subrecipients, subgrantees. The OJDP Comprehensive Gang Model. It's evidence-based framework that combines prevention, intervention, and suppression tactics. It includes 5 core strategies: community mobilization, opportunity provision, social intervention, suppression, organizational change, and development. Gang desistance and diversion is broadly understood as intervening with those youth who are already gang involved. OJDP's FY19 Youth Gang Desistance and Diversion Grants Program is part of the Project Safe Neighborhoods suite of programs. These initiatives coordinate with the Project Safe Neighborhood team in the district of the respective U.S. Attorney's Office. Applicants are highly encouraged to demonstrate coordination with their United States Attorney's Office District's Project Safe Neighborhood team in their submission. Organizations are encouraged to develop and implement a variety of desistance and diversion strategies, including providing access for gang-involved youth to job-related education opportunities, ensuring that substance abuse programming, mental health counseling, and other services for gang members are available and accessible, providing a variety of services that assist targeted youth and their families in adopting non-deviant values and accessing programs and organizations that will meet their social, educational, vocational, and sometimes health, housing, and income needs. Establishing street outreach to focus on core gang youth with special capacity to reach youth, both non-adjudicated and adjudicated, in a local community setting. Organizations are encouraged to develop and implement a variety of desistance and diversion strategies, including providing access for gang-involved youth to job-related education opportunities, and ensuring that substance abuse programs, mental health counseling, and other services for gang members are available and accessible. Organizations are encouraged to develop and implement a variety of desistance and diversion strategies, including provide a variety of services that assist targeted youth and their families in adopting non-deviant values and assessing programs and organizations that will meet their social, educational, vocational, and sometimes health, housing, and income needs. Establishing street outreach to focus on core gang youth with special capacity to reach youth, both non-adjudicated and adjudicated, in a local community setting. The goal of this solicitation is to support communities to develop a wide variety of desistance or diversion strategies that are evidence-based or promising models for youth at risk of becoming gang-involved or continuing in the gang lifestyle. The objectives are to reduce the impact of violence on youth by improving identification, screening, access, delivery, and quality of services available to youth exposed to gang-related violence. Reduce and sustain reductions in a community youth violence, particularly gun and gang violence and victimization. Prevent violence and promote healing from victimization and exposure to violence in the home, school, and community. Enhance effective programs and strategies to identify and serve youth at risk of becoming gang involved or continuing in the gang lifestyle. Convene a task force or working group to identify service gaps and barriers and create a blueprint for a comprehensive network of services for youth at risk of becoming gang involved or continuing in the gang lifestyle. To develop and expand and enhance the use of community assessments and strategic planning. Conduct public awareness activities to raise awareness of community-based gang violence and prevention efforts. There's some additional sources that we tend to mention here. OJDP Model Program Guide contains information about evidence-based juvenile justice and youth prevention, intervention, and reentry programs. It is a resource for practitioners and communities about what works, what is promising, and what does not work in juvenile justice, delinquency prevention, and child protection and safety. OJPCrimeSolutions.gov uses rigorous research to inform practitioners and policymakers about what works in criminal justice, juvenile justice, and crime victim services. Youth.gov provides interactive tools and other resources to help youth-serving organizations and community partnerships plan, implement, and participate in effective programs for youth. Under this program, OJDP will, as appropriate, give priority consideration in award decisions to applications that propose projects that directly benefit federally designated qualified opportunity zones. In order to assist OJDP in considering this factor, applicants should include information in the application that specifies how the project will enhance public safety in the specified QOZ. For resources on QOZs and a current list of designated QOZs, see the U.S. Department of Treasury's resource webpage. What an application should include. For this solicitation, OJDP has designated the following application elements as critical: project abstract, program narrative, budget detail worksheet, and a budget narrative. The project abstract summarizes the program in 400 words or less, briefly describes the project's purpose, population to be served, and the activities that the applicant will implement to achieve the project goals and objectives. It should describe how the applicant will measure progress towards these goals. A program narrative, 30-page limit, and must include a statement of the problem, goals, objectives, and performance measures, project design, implementation, capabilities and competencies, letters of support, memorandums of understanding. Statement of the problem. Applicants should briefly describe the nature and scope of the problem that the program will address. Applicants should use data to provide evidence that the problem exists, demonstrate the size and scope of the problem, and document the effects of the problem on the target population and the larger community. Applicants should describe the target population and any previous or current attempts to address the problem. Applicants should describe the goals of the proposed program and identify its objectives. Performance measures are listed in a grid in the solicitation. OJDP does not require applicants to submit performance data with their application.
All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Darian Hammerhan. I'll be taking it from here. So a note on performance measures. We will require each successful applicant to submit regular performance data that will demonstrate the results of the work carried out under this award. So the performance data needs to directly relate to the goals, objectives, and deliverables stated in your application. OJP's performance measures page is going to contain an overview of all the performance measurement activity at OJP. And on page 13 of the solicitation, that will have the link there, and an example of the performance measure table is going to be found in Appendix A. So continuing with the program narrative, you should also describe project design and implementation. So that would be details on how your project is going to operate throughout the funding period, which is a period of 36 months, and it should describe the strategies that you will plan to use in order to achieve your stated goals and objectives. For capabilities and competencies, you should be able to describe the experience and capability of your organization and any contractors or sub-grantees that you are planning to use to implement and manage your effort and its associated federal funding. We would recommend that you really highlight and emphasize any previous experience you have in implementing similar projects with a similar design or a magnitude. You should also describe how you'll meet each of the qualifications outlined in the priority considerations and project-specific information for the solicitation that you are applying for. For letters of support and memoranda of understanding, or MOUs, if you're submitting an application as a joint group, you should provide a signed and dated letter of support or an MOU for all of the key partners. This should include an expression of support for the program and a statement of willingness to participate and collaborate with that program. You should also be able to describe the partner's current roles and responsibilities in the planning process and the expected responsibilities once the program is up and running. Continuing with the MOUs, you should also include in those letters an estimate of the percentage of time that each partner will devote to the planning and operation of the project. These letters may be addressed to the OJJDP administrator, and only letters of support that are submitted by the due date with the full application will be considered during this review process. So if you submit them later, after you already turned in your application package, they will not be considered. Moving on to the budget detail worksheet and budget narrative. So your budget narrative should clearly describe every category of expenses listed in the budget detail worksheet. So the form that we require you to fill out, there's a link to it in the solicitation, but it's the budget detail worksheet. And that's where you're going to categorize each expense, and you include the narrative within that document. So in a section of the solicitation, there's more information on how to prepare that budget and how to submit it. So that'll be found in the OJP Grant Application Resource Guide. OJJDP supports a National Training and Technical Assistance Center to provide assistance to our funded sites addressing youth gang violence. And all of the sites that are funded through this solicitation are expected to work closely with that TTA center. The successful applicants will be expected to participate in up to a 3-day cross-site grantee meeting in each year of the project and budget period for as many as 3 representatives to travel and attend those meetings. So those locations are going to be determined at a later date, but we will expect you to account for that in your budget. Additional items that your applications should include. You should provide information on any proposed procurement contracts or subawards if that's what you're planning to use to help plan and implement your programs. You should include an applicant disclosure of any pending applications for other federal programs, a executive summary chart, an indirect cost agreement if you include indirect costs in your budget, and a tribal authorization if that applies to your particular organization. Continuing with that, you should also include a financial management system of internal controls questionnaire. This will also include a disclosure of whether you have a high-risk status, a disclosure of lobbying activities, the applicant disclosure and justification if you have a DOJ high-risk status, again, if applicable to your organization, a research and evaluation, independence and integrity statement, a timeline of your project period, so everything that's going to happen throughout the course of the 3-year project period, and a logic model. Next, so the application should also include information regarding the communication with the Department of Homeland Security, or DHS, and or Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE. So each applicant should provide responses to the below questions as an attachment to the application. So the questions are, does your jurisdiction have any laws, policies, or practices related to whether, when, or how employees may communicate with DHS or ICE? And is your jurisdiction subject to any laws from a superior political entity, like a state law that might bind the city that meets the description in question 1? Additionally, if the answer is yes to either question 1 or 2, you should provide a copy of each law or policy. You should describe each practice and also explain how that law, policy, or practice complies with our statutory authority, which is listed right there. And it's also included in your solicitation. So during the project period, the successful program site applicants should be prepared to work with the National Gang Center, which is our designated national training and technical assistance provider, to address any local TTA needs. So that's their logo. The National Gang Center is a project jointly funded by OJJDP and the Bureau of Justice Assistance, BJA, Office of Justice Programs, U.S. Department of Justice. So the National Gang Center is an integral component of the Justice Department's mission to provide innovative leadership in coordination with federal, state, local, and tribal justice systems to prevent and reduce crime. So there's more information about the National Gang Center on their website here, and they, as the TTA provider, they are really offering you tools to help inform, equip, and train communities in order to prevent gang violence, reduce gang involvement, and suppress any gang-related crime. So for our selection criteria, we have a number of criteria that we will use to evaluate your application. So the first thing is statement of the problem. That will be located within the narrative attachment of your application. That's going to be weighted 20%. So you should demonstrate what the problem is in your jurisdiction, in the area, and why it needs addressing under this program. And yeah. Number 2, project design and implementation. So the thoughts you have on how you're going to develop, implement, enhance your project in order to address the problem that's stated. 3, capability, and that's going to be worth 35%. 3, capabilities and competencies, so any experience that you or any project partners have in this in this kind of project design and implementation, any background knowledge, any particular expertise you may have. So that's going to be worth 25%. Number 4, a plan for collecting the data required for the solicitation's performance measures is going to be weighted 10%. Again, the solicitation is going to contain more information on the exact performance measures that are going to be required under this solicitation. And the purpose of this selection criteria is to really ensure that you have a strong understanding of what our requirements are and how you are going to specifically meet those requirements. Additionally, the budget, which is also worth 10%, it should be complete, cost-effective, and allowable. So you'll need to demonstrate that all of these are necessary for the implementation of your project activities. They should generally demonstrate how you will maximize cost-effectiveness of any expenditures, and the narrative that's also going to be included within your budget detail worksheet to demonstrate that cost effectiveness in relation to potential alternatives and goals of the project. So you should really demonstrate that you've really given thought and consideration to how else you might go about these expenses. So our application review process. OJP is committed to ensuring a fair and open process for awarding our grant. Our office specifically, OJJDP, will review the application to make sure the information presented is reasonable, understandable, measurable, and achievable, in addition to being consistent with the solicitation. Our peer reviewers are going to review the applications submitted that meet the basic minimum requirements. We might use internal peer reviewers, so that's people local to OJJDP, external peer reviewers, or a combination of the two to review applications. Additional considerations for OJJDP include geographic diversity, strategic priorities, and available funding. So how to apply? The application must be submitted through grants.gov, and we really strongly encourage you to submit applications 72 hours prior to the due date to allow time to receive validation messages or rejection notifications from the website, and to correct in a timely fashion any problems that may have been caused in a rejection notification. Late applications will not be accepted unless there is a problem with grants.gov on OJJDP's end of things. So if we're experiencing a problem on our end, then that's on us. So we will consider a late application. A problem with grants.gov on the applicant side, like a lack of a DUNS number is an example that we tend to see, won't result in a waiver to submit late. So we strongly encourage all prospective applicants to sign up for grants.gov email notifications with the solicitation. If the solicitation is modified at any point for any reason, individuals who sign up for these updates will be automatically notified. So here are a few links to helpful resources, grant writing tips, the DOJ financial guide that's really going to help with your budget in terms of determining allowable and cost-effective expenses. And the National Gang Center also provides a great deal of information that is going to help really determine different models and ways that you can develop a project design and implementation. And again, they're going to be the TTA provider under this solicitation, so it's important to have an understanding of how you would be coordinating with them. So OJJDP and the National Gang Center Bulletin. We recently released an updated version of the Gangs in Schools, and that is going to provide schools and law enforcement with sound practices and collaborative techniques to identify, assess, and address gang activity in a school setting. And we have the link right there. Response Center. So please feel free to ask any questions in our chat box, and we are going to answer as many as we can right now. Questions can also be directed to the Response Center, and we have that information right there. You'll also be able to find that in the webinar handout. And we're going to move into our Q&A session. So Eric and myself will take it away.
Thank you. Before we do such, I need to sort of raise a sort of point here. The following elements have been designated as critical elements per page 10 of our solicitation. And that is the program narrative, the budget detailed worksheet, as well as the budget narrative. And I want to kind of reiterate that before we get into the Q&A. Thank you, Derek.
Mm-hmm. All right. So one of the questions in relation to that is there a specific budget form that should be used? Yes, that's going to be the budget detail worksheet. There's a link to it in the solicitation. And again, that's going to, it's a lovely Excel spreadsheet that's going to break down all of the costs and expenses within each budget category. And there's also going to be a section for you to include the narrative. Let's see. Is the $500,000 an annual funding level or for the 36 months? So the $500,000 is going to be for the 36-month project period. So that's the total amount you're going to be getting. Let's see. What performance evaluation tool is required? So that's going to be on page 13 of the solicitation. That's going to provide you with more information on OJP performance measures. And again, Appendix A is going to provide a performance measures table. Let's see. Do letters of support count towards the 30-page limit? No, they do not. The 30-page limit is restricted to the narrative section only. So you can have as many letters of support as you so choose, and they can be uploaded as a separate attachment. Sorry, there's so many questions. Let's see. Is there a limit or set guideline regarding portion of the budget that can be used for the task force? There is not. No. So as long as you are able to provide information on the necessity of that cost, as long as everything is allowable, reasonable, and cost effective, there is no limit. Let's see. Do we require any cost-benefit analysis to measure the effectiveness of the program? We do not. All right. What are the geographic or demographic priorities for this grant? So in terms of reviewing our application, as that's something we consider, we look at the pool of applicants and determine where the needs might be. So in your statement of the problem, you can include information on the particular geographic and demographic uniqueness of your particular area, and we'll be able to determine, as you state the particular needs, what that's going to look like. What is the age range of the target population? So the target population is anyone under the age of 18. So the review process and who will be reviewing the application. The review process is it's subject to change depending on the number of applicants we get. So it might be internal reviewers within OJJDP. It might be external peer reviewers that we have in our database, and it might be some kind of combination. So it might be internal for one panel, and it might be external for another. So that's what that's going to look like. So can the presenter please describe what would be required of entities who receive the grant in terms of cooperation with DHS and ICE? So there are 2 certifications that need to be signed by your organizations that confirm that your organization abides by the federal immigration laws. These certifications are not expected to be sent in with your application. And if you receive an award under this solicitation, you will have 45 days to send in these signed certifications along with your acceptance of the award. Does the target population include youth at risk of gang involvement or just those who are known to already be gang involved? It includes both. So again, anyone at risk of the involvement or anyone that is currently involved in the gang lifestyle. How many applicants do we anticipate? This is one of our newer programs, so I don't think we have an idea of how many applicants we're going to anticipate. I mean, we're hoping a lot. We would love to see what the needs are in the field. For juvenile justice custody agency, would you
recommend?
Would you suggest the diversion grant or the suppression grant? It's really up to the needs of your jurisdiction and what gang problems you're experiencing. I would definitely consult both solicitations and think through what exactly your needs are and how you think you can best address those needs in terms of project design and implementation, and what your capabilities and competencies are as they stand now. Let's see. What is the solicitation number? So the grants.gov solicitation number is OJJDP 2019 14983. Is this, sorry, just lost the question. Is this open to U.S. territories? Yes, it is. And the targeted 18 or younger youth, do they have to be enrolled in school? No, they do not. How is gang involvement determined or
Confirmed.
Confirmed.
Via the community assessment, and certainly some of the tools that were referenced as resources might give communities a way of making that determination.
And let's see. And
Can former DOJ employee be part of the grant application program?
can former DOJ employees be a part of the grant application program? I think you would have to describe in your application how they're going to fit into this program, and you would have to definitely think through how there wouldn't be a conflict of interest there. It really depends on, I think, the level of involvement in the program and what exactly that would look like.
If we have no project, safe neighborhood in our jurisdiction. The resource center.
So if we have no project-safe neighborhoods in our jurisdiction, are there other ways we can demonstrate cooperation with the U.S. Attorney's Office? I would look at I would send that question to the Resource Center, and we'll be able to better assess an answer for that. How many grants will be awarded nationwide? We anticipate making 4 grants under this award. And
community that have received previous grants. Geraldine.
do communities that had received a previous grant to develop a sustainable model receive priority consideration for implementing the sustainable model? That's something I would also recommend sending to the Response Center for a more detailed answer.
Budget question. What are the allowable overhead costs? Jacqueline, get the budget.
So what is the allowable overhead cost under this grant? I would consult the budget section of the solicitation. That's going to provide more information on what a sample budget would look like in terms of reasonable and allowable costs.
Yes.
Are we able to apply for a program that we've already begun piloting, or must it be a new program? You are able to apply for a program that you've already begun piloting. And you should definitely include information on how this award would really enhance that program, how it might supplement them, really just get it going a little bit more off the ground. Is the intent of the grant capacity building or supplementing existing infrastructure? I would say, depending on the needs of your community, it can be both. Just again, depending on what you include in your statement of the problem. Is preference given to one region of the U.S. over another? No. Nope. Are the ICE certificates available for review online? That's a question I would direct to the Response Center. They're going to be able to give you a little bit more detail.
And as we're waiting for folks to continue to submit their questions, I wanted to remind everyone to please, if you're having difficulties accessing the handouts pod, feel free to contact the OJJDP Help Desk. And also don't forget that we will have this recording available at a later date as well.
Let's see. If we are currently funded through pass-through funding for OJJDP mentoring, will the measurables we report on through DCTAT help us have a stronger application? That's a question I think I would also direct to the response center. It would be a little bit hard to tell given what exactly the mentoring program you are implementing is. Again, directed to the response center. I think that would be the most helpful. Would this fit a sports program? It would really depend on what the issue is in your community, what the target population is, and how you plan to address that problem. So that's something you could definitely elaborate on in your application. Are there specific partnership requirements, example, law enforcement, as part of the grant application?
You definitely have to have a relationship with the Project Safe Neighborhood, a letter from the U.S. Attorney's Office.
Is there any type of special preferences available? So we do have priority considerations that we outline in the solicitation. I believe information can be found on page, that can be found on page 15 of the solicitation. So you can provide documentation of anticipated benefit to qualified opportunity zones if that's applicable to your area. And we also have priority consideration in award decisions to applications that propose projects that will directly benefit federally designated, again, the qualified opportunity zones. So in terms of that, if you are including that in your application, you should include information that specifies how the project is going to enhance public safety in those specified zones. And the solicitation also includes additional resources on those zones, a list of what those designated zones are at the moment. Those can be found on page 7 of the solicitation. Should small towns of approximately 50,000 people apply? Of course. There's no limitation in terms of how many people are in a particular jurisdiction. Is there 4 awards per state? No, that's going to be 4 awards total. So that will include at a national level. Let's see. The response center contact information, that is going to be found on this PowerPoint. It's on the slide right before the Q&A. It's actually right here. So, yeah, that's the response center.
And Eric and Darian, I can go ahead and drop response center information in the chat box for our audience as well.
Excellent, thank you.
Great.
And what is the difference in scope between the gang suppression grant and the gang diversion grant? I would refer your question to the response center. They're going to be able to provide you with a more detailed breakdown of the differences between the two, and that can help you determine what the best solicitation would be in terms of applying. So finding the exact requirements for this grant seems, is there a bulleted list of all required material? So this presentation, I think, really breaks down things into a more digestible level here. So I would recommend going back through these slides to sort of look at the bullet points in terms of what's required. I know the solicitation can be a little lengthy. Great. Waiting on a few more questions to come through. If the projected start date is October 1, what is the expected time frame for organizations to get a response if they are awarded? You will receive a notification if you have been funded no later than September 30th of 2019. You will be notified if your agency isn't selected to receive an award by October 30th, 2019. And the point of contact and authorizing official listed in your application will receive an email notification and a summary of the peer review comments of your application. Waiting on a few more questions to come in. And please feel free to keep them coming. Did you respond to the sanctuary city question? Do you mind repeating that question? I'm so sorry, I must have missed it. Okay, with regards to page 12 on the communication with DHS and ICE requirement, does this put organizations in a sanctuary city at a disadvantage? I would direct that question to the response center. They'll be able to provide you with a bit more detail there. Do targeted youth have to be active members of a gang, or is it possible they are at risk of entering into a group? So no, they don't have to be members of an active gang. This solicitation is for both active gang members or those involved in the gang lifestyle, in addition to at-risk youth. So again, the response center can address questions regarding whether sanctuary cities are eligible for grants. So with, I also wanted to reiterate that applicants are highly encouraged to demonstrate coordination with your U.S. Attorney's District Project Safe Neighborhood team in your submission. Really wanted to hone in on that. But it's not mandatory, it is highly encouraged. Just wanted to be clear on that one. Let's see. We have over a 2-year waiting list for subsidized housing in my community. Could we use funding from the grant to pay for subsidies for housing for participating youth and families? Another question I would direct to the response center. And let's see, can youth under age 18 as targeted can youth be under age 18 as targeted program participants, and can their family members be program participants as well? Yes. Aside from making a written proposal, how does one go about submitting multimedia proof of existing success for currently existing nonprofit gang and violence reduction programs? It would have to be demonstrated in your narrative. But for more information, I would direct that to the response center. So is there a minimum number of youth to be served? No, there is not. What will the reporting include? More information there can be found in the section on the performance measures.
Performance measures.
Yep. Is this one-year funding? No, this is funding. It's going to be in the amount of $500,000. It is for a 3-year project period, so 36 months. The deadline is June 24th.
Yes.
And your deadline is 11:59 p.m. Eastern Time on June 24th. And can a partner organization be a religious organization? Yes. Is the response center the best place to go for help in this whole process? Yes. Let's see, can an application cover more than one state? I believe you should direct that question to the response center as well. And will preference be given to applicants who are implementing the OJJDP comprehensive gang model? No. No preference there. Can this be used by an organization just beginning these services? Absolutely. And I believe William is in the chat providing more information on how to access the handouts if you're having any trouble. Do we have to partner with a nonprofit organization to apply? No. I just wanted to reiterate the eligibility. So eligible applicants are going to be limited to states, including U.S. territories, units of local government, federally recognized tribal partners, nonprofit and for-profit organizations, institutions of higher education, including tribal institutions of higher education, and again, a reminder, all recipients and subrecipients must forego any profit or management fee. So individuals are not eligible. Waiting on some more questions to come in. So if you are still having problems with downloading the handout, you can contact the OJJDP Help Desk.
Yeah, and again, for those who are experiencing any difficulties with accessing the handouts, again, the way to access, you take your mouse, you click on the file name, then click the download button, or you can go to the drop-down in the right-hand corner of the handouts pod and select download all, and you'll be able to get the files there. If you're still experiencing any type of difficulties, contact us at OJJDP NTTA@usdoj.gov, and we'll be able to email you the handouts, or you can contact us at 1-833-647-0513.
Do we use the OMB approval number 1121-0339 budget worksheet for this grant? I would direct that to the response center. Did you say a replay is available? Yes, it's going to be on the NTTAC YouTube channel within a week. So, and Alyssa just provided the link to it in the chat box. Does the project need to be focused in one location, or can it include several cities? It can definitely include several cities. Is the webinar required in order to apply? No. This webinar is an opportunity for you to ask these kinds of questions, for us to provide more information on on the solicitation, what exactly we're looking for, the purpose of this solicitation, and to really give you the knowledge to submit the best application possible. All right. Are there any additional questions that people have? If not, I would definitely recommend referring questions that you might think of later to the Response Center, and you will have access to these handouts. And like William said, this is going to be available on the NTTAC YouTube channel within a week. So, yeah. If there are no more questions, I think we can turn it back over to William.
All right, great. Well, again, thank you all for joining us today and for a very informative webinar with our presenters. We appreciate it. Thank you all to our audience that has joined as well. We appreciate it and hope that this was very informative for you all today. Just as a last few minute reminders that we have for today's webinar, you may contact NTTAC through the website displayed on this slide. You can stay up to date on the latest information by signing up for NTTAC's TTA listserv. And also don't forget to check us out on Facebook at OJJDP TTA. You can also contact the OJJDP via the Help Desk by following the contact information on this slide. This contact information is also in the chat as well. And do you have a training and technical assistance need? Well, if so, please submit a request via the OJJDP TTA 360 platform. You can access it through the link displayed on this slide. And as a reminder, the webinar recording will be archived on NTTAC's YouTube channel, where you can also view past webinars. For the event transcript and supporting materials, please contact the OJJDP TTA Help Desk. And lastly, we would really appreciate if you all could please take about 5 minutes to complete a feedback evaluation for us. Again, thank you all for joining us today. Have a great afternoon.